Hello and welcome to the Villa Park podcast. It's me, Rich, and I'm back with a bit of a different one. We've got our talking tactics from Wolves game to run through very, very quickly. We won't do a full tactical breakdown of that because I'm sure you all saw the match and there's not too much to go through. And then we also, obviously, it was a very, very, very eventful deadline day for Aston Villa. So we're going to do the run the rule over the three main signings that were made across the deadline day, a couple of days, with Gareth, our resident football analyst expert. How you doing, Gareth? Good to see you, mate.
Yeah, not too bad, thanks. Sorry, you're breaking up a little bit, so I'm struggling. But yeah, I mean, it was a game that, it was just a struggle in it, really, from start to finish. We never looked like we were going to be sort of on top of it or getting anything out of it, really. It was a struggle. Everyone to a man was down on a sort of a 6-level performance, if you like. And it was quite surprising, but maybe not so much considering how we tend to play after a Champions League game in the week, of course.
Yeah, and against Wolves as well, which is never an easy game for us. Guys, make sure you hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. We're marching on to 6,000 subscribers, so please do help us continue to grow, ultimately on the road to 10k. And get your comments in, your thoughts. So let's whiz through the Wolves game. We haven't got all our usual slides because we want to focus on some of the signings as well. But the match stats, the tail of the tape. Gareth, anything to kind of report on here? Anything that you noticed from previous games that was any different?
I mean, again, look at the possession stats, look at the field tilt, how much time we've spent again in the fight in the Wolves' final third. You can pretty much say double the amount of passes. But the one thing that I did notice quite a bit was the long balls from Wolves, clearly looking to hit those channels, hit players running in behind a lot of the time. And I think even their defensive stats are a lot better than us. They did do, of course, a lot more defending. I just don't think we made enough of what we had, which is obvious because we lost the game 2-0. But considering we spent that amount of time in the Wolves half, you would expect a bit of a better result.
Yeah, and look at the interceptions there, 14 interceptions, 34 clearances. I mean, we know that Wolves are going to throw their bodies on the line, defend their goal, particularly when they went 1-0 up so early. But I don't know, does that indicate wasteful passes that are getting intercepted, poor crosses that are getting cleared? I don't know.
Yeah, I think to be honest with you, it's a mixture of the both because Wolves had 3 high turnovers, for example, from us. So you could say that they didn't press that well. They didn't really press that high. It was just coordinated and it did well. And they knew that we like to play those passes out to the left or into central areas, and they just made it really, really difficult for us. But our passing, let's be honest, overall was quite poor and noticeably so.
Yeah, well, let's have a look at that passing network, our usual slide. Anything here to sort of that stood out to you in terms of how we were trying to set up?
Yeah, for this game, we've plotted the squares as the substitutes as squares, by the way. So it's a bit hard to decide a bit if you can manage it. So you're look at that sort of that curve, if you like, that C shape from Wolves, from all the way to the middle third, all the way back round to this left hand side. So you can see the compactness, and you can see what they're trying to do. They're doubling up on wide players, hence why Morgan Rogers and Leon Bailey barely got any change. And you can exactly see what they're trying to do, trying to be solid in centrals, but more so that they're trying to back up those two players. For example, look at Digne and Morgan Rogers. Sorry, Jacob Ramsey on the left-hand side. You can see that they're doubling up on those two players. The same on the right-hand side. So they just made it really difficult for us to play.
And what would you suggest like if you showed that information to Unai after a game, obviously people can see what happened. But what would you suggest would be like the tactical strategy to kind of get round that? Would it be to have someone who could beat a man in midfield a little bit better? Or would it be to have deeper runs, like, you know, more midfielders running beyond the striker? What would it be?
It's hard, isn't it? Because it's when you're playing against a back, let's say a back five in this example, but a back three, you're basically going to end up facing a low block. That's basically what a back five drops onto the edge of their own 6-yard box. And we've seen Manchester City, for example, really have trouble nowadays against breaking teams down because they know how that we play. We're similar, and we like to get, we're similar like a De Bruyne sort of role with Morgan Rogers in that pocket, Ramsey in the other pocket, similar to, so that's what they've got to try and work out. It's more about sort of, can you get more men across that front line so that you're then pulling those wing backs right out to create those spaces for the 1-2s for Rodgers and Ramsey into those half spaces, crosses into the box, get your centre forwards in there, and sort of for Tielemans and Onana, just try and get some players in the box. But for me, we're good in wide areas. If it's compact, that's gonna be the way you're gonna have to go.
Yeah, no, I agree. I
It's
agree, and
really
I also,
hard. I can't say that enough. But playing against the back five is really, really difficult.
especially some of the the big units that Wolves have got. They're not small guys, are they? They're big. That Totti always seems to play well against us. He's a strong defender. So yeah, it's always difficult. I always think as well, longer range shots. I know Tielemans had a couple. I think Marlon maybe had one just outside or just inside the box. But I do think sometimes engineering efforts where you can have them from outside the box to force saves from the goalkeeper that might rebound or might force a player to come out to you to then be able to slot the striker in might be an option as well.
Yeah, because we kind of look for either Leon Bailey cutting in and a dinked cross over to that back stick, or we're looking for runs from Rodgers and Ramsey for cutbacks. That's basically exactly what you're dead right. So try and make some angles. Tielemans, like you say, he likes the odd shot from long range, as does Marlon. But statistics will tell you that the more you shoot, the more chances you're going to have of scoring. So try and shoot is the option, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. Well, let's have a look at the shot map because obviously 4 big chances for Wolves, 5 on target, only 8 shots. Villa had 10 shots, I suppose, but maybe not enough when you compare that to like the Celtic game, which obviously every game is different. But yeah, not as much as we wanted to create from the possession that we had.
No, and again, the low block, I point out to the low block. Look how many of those shots are out having to be from outside the box. You've got a couple of direct free kicks in there, admittedly, but you've only got, say, let's call it 4 shots in the box, although that one's on the line. Let's call it 4 shots in the box. So they're restricting you to one big chance a game. Wolves had 4. A clinical side would have doubled that and at least got 3 or 4 goals in the game, but they limited us to just 0.51 xG, Rich. It's very small.
Yeah. Well, this is the timeline here. I mean, again, nothing that we could get going really.
No, I mean, and it's one of them things. Exactly right. You just couldn't get going. And like I say, that sort of the rounded off XG that we did earlier, this is rounded off. So it's kind of a little bit, it's non-plus, but it's just, you've got those sort of efforts for Wolves just before half time, sorry. So they're sort of putting on that little bit of pressure as well. And it just became really difficult. And you think that we're going to get that 1 goal back in the game. We probably could have won the game 2-1, but then they sucker punch right at the end.
Yeah, and then you wanted to put the momentum in there as well. I mean, Villa, like you say, had I guess long spells of possession. Does that indicate, but not really any prolonged pressure? What do you see from this?
Well, yeah, you've got periods, haven't you? Let's just go for the 3 examples here: the 60 to just over 65 minutes, and then you've got a period of sort of 75 to 80, and then another period just before sort of the end of the game to the end of the game, before the end of the game to the end of the game. But to create just 0.37 expected threat, considering you're spending over 70% of the time in their final third, you'd expect that expected threat level number to be higher because you're playing in more dangerous areas. and it just didn't happen. So you've got to convert that sort of threat and time spent in the final third and convert that into high expected threat numbers.
Yeah. Quick look at the players' expected threat, the top 10. Tielemans, Matson, and then obviously Cunha in there. So, some of the Villa players in there were reasonably high. Nothing much in terms of carrying the ball, though.
No, and Matson was a substitute, wasn't he?
Yes, he was.
So to create that 0.23 when we're looking at normally at Luca Digne, your Morgan Rogers and everything else, and not even Boubacar Kamara played at left centre off, and he's created the third best expected threat. Well, such a low number, but he's the third most expected threat of the team. Where are the attacking players in this? We're expecting to see Morgan, Rogers, and Bailey up where Cunha and much above Cunha and Kamara, surely, but it just didn't happen again.
No. Quick look at I think we got some good feedback on this. The expected threat from the passes, and then we'll talk about the expected threat from ball carriers. Guedes up there, Bailey substitute, but again, not high numbers. And Wolves didn't have to, did they? Because they got the early goal. It was the onus, I know, with the away team, but the onus was on us.
That's right, and Guedes is a centre forward, by the way, for Wolves. So I mean, you're looking at their centre forward carrying the most expected threat. I mean, these are really low numbers, by the way, from both sides, and it reflects how poorly both teams were really on the ball in general. So there's not much to really read from it, apart from the fact that again, Leon Bailey is up there from the passes, and he is up again here from the carries.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, a quick look at the kind of distance covered, total touches. Anything that stood out to you here from any particular players?
No, I mean, you look at Cunha and look at the work that he's putting in at 10 kilometres covered, from a centre forwards position, pretty well, number 10, let's call it. It's a really good work ethic from him. And Tielemans, just nearly 15 kilometres, again, putting in a lot of hard work, as was Kamara. But you look at, again, like players like Totti Gomez for Wolves, compared to sort of our sorts of players in those positions. We've just got to be a little bit better than that.
Yeah. I know a few players were substituted, but Morgan Rogers played the full match, 7 kilometres, maybe a little bit more needed from him in that game. McGinn over 8. Yeah,
and also we referred to Ollie Watkins last week, run nearly 8 kilometres. Remember, we highlighted him for running 8 kilometres in the game. 3 kilometres, just 3 kilometres. It's not good enough.
Nah, I know he went off at half time. He had a little bit of an injury, but again, 12 touches in total. Yeah. When you're controlling possession as much as we did, I know Wolves look quite threatening, but you've got to be doing more movement than that, particularly into back three.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, like I say, I looked at that as well and saw that he went off at half time. I thought the 3, and I thought it's really low. And then I looked at he went off at half time. But even so, compared that to the last game, you would expect him to be hitting 5K probably in the first half, the way that Watkins has been running the stats for him lately. I was quite surprised at that. So maybe he was carrying a little bit more of a knock early on.
Yeah. Now, just to break up a little bit from the usual talking tactics, it was a massive deadline day for Aston Villa, and fair to say, I think Villa fans have been swept up with the excitement of the new signings. Now, not saying you're going to bring people back down to earth, Gareth, but maybe some realism to the sign-in. So we're going to go through the 3 main ones that came through on deadline day. Let's start with Marcus Rashford. Obviously, wanting to resurrect his career, let's say, fresh start from Manchester United. We can talk about all those, sort of storylines, but the cold hard facts of the player. First of all, in your opinion, before we get his radar up onto the screen, what are we to expect, or what is Unai hoping that Marcus Rashford will bring?
I mean, I guess he wants him to be a Morgan Rogers type wide man, but more staying wide and coming inside, really sort of with a dribbling threat, a powerful, can cut in. And really, he is one of those players. It kind of refers back to our talk about Wolves, really, in that he will cut inside and shoot from distance, and has the
Mm.
ability to do so from a different area of the pitch. Whereas the types of Ramseys and the Rodgers don't really. Morgan Rodgers, you could say, cut inside, but they don't really sort of unleash shots from distance and haven't really got that long range shooting ability. Whereas Marcus Rashford has, and pace and power as well. So we just need him to hit the ground running, don't we?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, I think this goes back to the 23-24 season. Don't think it was his most prolific, but yeah, what are you noticing from this in terms of his radar and his, like you said, his strengths and weaknesses?
Yeah, I mean, it's really difficult, isn't it? Because under so many different managers and playing different positions, he sort of struggled on and off. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at sort of the XG at 0.29. It's not bad. It's what you're really looking for is what I referred to earlier, is the shot creating actions from take-ons, which is that obviously does what it says on the tin. So we're just looking at that for him. Really, can we get him to press a little bit higher as well? But again, we just need those numbers to be higher in terms of ball carrying, output from you dribbling, what you're going to do without it. The expected threat for him is really, really low at 0.09. And it's hard to judge. This wasn't a bad season for him overall. It's just one of them things. I mean, in 22-23, for example, he had 35 appearances. Didn't get that many goals really, but he's had some good seasons. Scored a couple of seasons where he scored 17 apiece with 5 and 7 assists, I think, on those 2 seasons. So that's what the form you're looking for him from. You're not going to get 25 goals a season, I don't think, anymore out of Marcus Rashford. Can he contribute 15 in the time that we're left with him? Probably not, but just got to contribute.
Yeah. I mean, I think anything like sort of 7 goals, let's say, in this sort of last half of the season, plus maybe 4 assists, something like that, 5 assists. I think that would be giving us something. And also, I imagine it would be having a Marcus Rashford that is somewhere in some sort of form will obviously then take attention away of defenders to him that may then open up space for a Morgan Rodgers or an Ollie Watkins or one of the other players that Marco Asensio, someone like that. So I think that as well is the perceived threat of someone coming in might then create more for other people.
Yeah, he's going to play instead of Jacob Ramsey, I would imagine, if he's going to play instead of anyone. And we know things are a little bit up and down with JJ at the minute. He's starting to find a little bit of form. So can he find himself at the side? Maybe, but I think that's probably going to be the position he goes in. Yeah, and we just need him to contribute a few goals, I think, especially from open play. But also poses a set piece threat as well, by the way, from long range, which we have struggled with a lot of the time.
Yeah,
Tielemans taking them on Dini. So another option there as well.
Yeah. Now, another player who I think creatively might be able to give Villa a bit of a spark, particularly maybe in European competitions, got the pedigree, got the experience. I have to say, I don't know a huge amount about him, but again, exciting a lot of Villa fans is Marco Asensio, signed on loan, potentially could be made a longer loan as well. I think if all reports are to be believed. What do you make of this signing before we get his radar on the screen?
Yeah, the conundrum for a good signing. I mean, he's a good player. He's a multiple Champions League winner. Why would you not say yes to him? The only thing is for me is where does he fit in? Plays a lot in a 4-3-3 for Paris Saint-Germain. Played barely any other shape whilst at the club. Now he's played in multiple positions. So I've got him here as he can play in a 4-3-3. Let's go through it. A left forward, a right forward, a left midfield, or a right midfield. So he can play in midfield plus across that front three. Now, does he play instead of Ollie Watkins? It's possible. It's possible that he does play central instead of Ollie Watkins. He could play on either flank. So is it another case of replacing Morgan Rodgers or JJ? What we're going to do? I think you're right. I think it's more going to be for European competitions, this signing.
And then just looking at that, I mean, when I was prepping, I thought assists, XG assisted. So that creativity, I guess, or the clever pass or the technical ability to pick a lock might be something that we used to seeing from him.
Yeah, and this is what we need. This is what we need in I think more in midfield. I can easily see him playing on the left of midfield and coming. I don't think we're going to change the shape. That's what worries me the most. So how do you fit him and Marcus Rashford into the same team and take Ollie Watkins, Jacob Ramsey out of the team? I don't see it so much. So But again, high expected threat numbers. You're looking at a ball carrier, and he's got an end product, because we can see that from the XG assisted. So we know he can carry the ball. We know he's got a product at the end of it. Shooting, not too bad. Again, you're not looking at a high pressing thing. He's had his struggles at PSG and everything else. But again, I'm quite intrigued by this one.
Yeah, I think everyone is, and like I say, it's going to be an really interesting signing. Maybe someone who will start some games, but will potentially come off the bench with sort of half an hour to go if we need a goal, or if we need to keep the ball, or there's various situations that you might be able to utilize him. So yeah, let's see
Yeah.
what happens. Now, the kind of final one is the one that was, I guess, maybe the most in terms of desperation, panic, whatever you want to call it, needing someone to come in. I think all the eggs went in the Loic Bade basket, which, again, could have been a really good exciting signing. This one is the sort of, I guess, option in terms of a body to come in, has potentially got a good pedigree before sort of going to Chelsea and maybe not having the best time. It's obviously Axel Disasi. And it's interesting to know that if he hadn't have come, we wouldn't have signed the centre back, which does go on to say, like, it was him or nothing. What do you make of it? Because I know in our group we've had a bit of, kind of discussion about what his strengths are, what his weaknesses are, and whether they do solve what Villa need at the back at the minute.
Yes, I agree 100% with everything you've just said, and I've been very vocal on social media about it. I wasn't very keen on it because I think it was a panic buy. I agree with you. I think they wanted Bade desperately, and then when that became apparent they weren't, they'd already got rid of Carlos. Maybe they'd had a word from Bade to say, yeah, I will be signing, and verbal agreement, and that hasn't come through. And by that time, they've actually sold Carlos, so they're in a sticky situation. I've been in it at clubs myself where you think you're going to you've got a verbal agreement, and something goes wrong, and all of a sudden you're back to your lists again. So it's one of them things. Yeah, if he can find that form he did at Monaco, I think we've got a good centre half on our hands. My worry is, like I've said to you guys on the group, in the build-up, he's not great in the build-up play. He's a big, strong lad. He's aerial ability, not a problem. But in the build-up play, do you take Ezri Konsa out? Because he will play at right centre-back. I don't see him playing instead of Tyrone Mings or instead of Pau Torres, to be honest. So I think you're looking at in face of Ezri Konsa. Now, what do you do? Do you go back to the hybrid back three and let him play on the right there and just have Konsa and Mings, Pau Torres, or whatever as the two centre halves and play that Dina on that left-hand side again? There's a lot to answer here for me. I'm just not sold on him straight away, given, like you said, when I've watched him a lot at Chelsea.
Yeah, now we're looking at his radar here. Strengths. If you've got passing there, we know he's a big lad, aerial duels, but tackling maybe not one of his strengths. So what have you interpreted from the radar from him?
Yeah, listen, it's a good radar. His stats for that season, considering this was his better season, really, sort of where he had the more starts, sort of, but he was alongside Thiago Silva at this time. So I think we have to take that into account for me. I mean, he's done a lot of these stats, obviously, himself, but he had good people around him, especially Thiago Silva a lot of the time, like I say. I just worry about, it's not the defensive side of him I worry about particularly. It's in that build-up play. He can be a bit stagnant on the ball, a bit sort of hesitant, and we've got that in Mings. And Mings is just starting to find his feet a little bit, I think, in terms of his passing, releasing the ball a little bit earlier. But he's a little bit like that Disasi, and that's what worries me a little bit. If you've only got Tyrone Mings and Disasi fit, that's not a great lot of creativity from your centre halves, which we talked about on the group as well, didn't we?
Yeah, exactly. I'm also seeing a lot of people interpreting that Konsa will just stick in his right centre back position and Disasi will potentially operate on that right back, sort of right centre back, if you like.
Yeah.
Do you see that? Obviously going back to that kind of heavily weighted attacking on the left to then sort of keeping Bailey or whoever it is, or Asensio out on that right hand side.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what I've said, but kind of like, let's just swap those positions over like you've just said. So, yeah, if you put Konsa right back and put Disasi sort of at the sort of right centre back and leave Konsa on the right, as it was a hybrid back three, like you say, with Dina attacking, yeah, it's the same thing. All you're doing is swapping the two players around. But yeah, it's more than possible because that it's just about having those players fit and having Pau Torres in there. The trouble is that we know Pau Torres defensively can be a little bit suspect. If you've got Disasi and him, it's all right in the build-up, but yet defensively, what's it going to be like? So it's going to be really interesting to see where he fits in and how much he plays.
Yeah. So a lot of people saying that Aston Villa have won the transfer window, if you can say that. So just to finish up, I mean, what would you say about Villa's window in terms of like grading it, if you like, or the success of it?
It's really tricky, isn't it? Because Marcus Rashford's form has obviously really been up in the air at Manchester United. Disasi's a little bit suspect. Asensio, his minutes have been a little bit sleepy. So, yeah, I think it's a 7, I'd probably say, because you're hesitant, or 7.5 because you're hesitant. Because if those players, all three, were playing regularly for their clubs, you're thinking, oh, this is great. But then again, you're not going to get those types of loan signings in if they are playing regularly. So you're kind of up in the air. But I see it from a different perspective, from how they would fit in an analytical and tactical perspective. I guess people could say we've won it if that's how they feel. The difference is that have they got the players that they wanted in? They didn't get Bardet, did they? They didn't get João Felix again. Whether that was ever on or not, I don't know. So would we have won the window better if we'd have got João Felix and Bardet in? My answer would be probably yes.
Yeah. And as with all these things, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. So we need to see them play. We need to see, I guess, 6 or 7 or 8 games in all competitions to see how they have done, because Rashford could come in on Sunday and score 2 goals, but then he might not score again for 7 or 8 games, or Asensio could really be a slow burn and then come in and get the winning goal in the Champions League last 16. So it's all up in the air, isn't it? So, but we'll be right here analysing all of the games, talking tactics right the way through. Gareth, thank you so much for jumping on and doing a bit of a double show in one. Where can people find you and all of the information on the signings and on the Wolves game?
Yeah, we'll put it all on at One Villa Analysis sometime this afternoon. We'll do a couple of separate posts on it.
Brilliant. Well, guys, thank you very much for watching. Make sure you smash the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. We'll be back with Tottenham preview and Tottenham reaction and fans forum and all your usual shows over the next few days. Thank you all for watching, and as always, remember, we all follow the Villa.